the massive chamber of the Galactic Council filled with voices as representatives from 12 different species took their positions around the circular room. High Chancellor Vexithar stood at the center podium with his forearms raised high to call for silence. The holographic display above them showed a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star in what the galaxy considered a backwater region of space. Earth, the home of humanity. The latest problem the Council needed to solve. Commander Zixel of the Krathi Empire stepped forward to present his military assessment. He was a decorated veteran who had overseen 17 successful campaigns against resistant species. His scales gleamed under the chamber lights as he activated his datapad. The numbers appeared in the air for everyone to see. The human fleet consisted of roughly 300 ships. Most of them were small frigates and destroyers. Their largest vessels barely qualified as cruisers by galactic standards. The technology scans showed power systems that were at least 2 centuries behind current galactic norms. Their weapons used basic plasma and kinetic projectiles. Their shields were standard electromagnetic barriers that any modern weapon could punch through with ease. The Krathi commander's voice carried confidence as he explained the battle plan. The coalition fleet numbered 2,147 ships. They had brought dreadnoughts from the Draconian Empire, battlecruisers from the Krathi forces, heavy carriers from 3 other species, support vessels and supply chains that could sustain a campaign for months if necessary. But Zixel assured the Council that months would not be needed. His simulations had run through every possible scenario. The humans would be overwhelmed in the first wave. Their fleet would be destroyed within 4 hours. Their orbital defenses would fall in another 2 hours. By the end of the day, Earth would surrender or face bombardment. Vexthar listened to the report with satisfaction. His mandibles clicked together in what his species considered a smile. The Council had given humanity 3 months to consider their ultimatum. Submit to galactic authority, accept status as a client species under Council protection, allow Council oversight of their government and military, contribute resources and labor to the greater galactic community. The terms were standard. Every species that joined the Galactic Order went through this process. Some accepted peacefully. Others required military persuasion. Humanity had chosen the latter path. The Draconian representative, a massive warrior named Coriax, laughed when the human response was played for the Council. A recorded message from Earth's leaders had been transmitted just yesterday. President Helen Carter had stood before the cameras with military officers behind her. Her words were simple and direct. Humanity rejected the ultimatum. They would not surrender their sovereignty. They would not become subjects of the Council. If the Council wanted Earth, they would have to take it by force, and humanity would make them pay for every inch of space. Corax found the defiance amusing rather than threatening. His species had conquered 40 star systems in the past decade alone. They had crushed resistance from species far more advanced than humanity. The Draconians had weapons that could crack planets, ships that could survive direct hits from antimatter bombs, warriors who had trained for combat since birth. What could these humans possibly do against such power? The Luminian representative, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline form, spoke with sadness rather than aggression. Her species valued peace above all else. They had tried to negotiate with humanity, offered to serve as mediators between Earth and the Council, suggested compromise solutions that would give humanity more autonomy, while still bringing them into the galactic fold. But both sides had refused. The Council wanted complete submission. Humanity wanted complete independence. War seemed inevitable now. What none of the Council members knew was that humanity had been preparing for this moment since the day they discovered they were not alone in the universe. 78 years ago, a Krathi scout ship had crashed in a desert region of Earth. The crew had died on impact. The Krathi Empire had written it off as an acceptable loss and never sent a recovery team. They had no idea that human scientists had spent decades reverse engineering every system on that ship, learning the principles of faster-than-light travel, understanding the basics of energy weapons and shield technology. Most importantly, discovering that they were not dealing with gods or magic, but with technology that could be understood and improved. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, in facilities hidden from orbital scans, thousands of engineers and scientists had been working around the clock for years. Gregory Hayes led the weapons development team. He was 53 years old with gray hair and a tired face that showed the stress of his work. His team had taken the basic plasma weapons from the Krathi ship and asked a simple question. What if we made them better? They had studied human particle physics, applied quantum mechanics in ways the Krathi had never considered, run computer simulations that would have taken alien scientists centuries to complete. The result was a weapon that did not just destroy matter, it unmade it. Broke down the fundamental bonds between atoms and released energy that made fusion bombs look like firecrackers. Linda Morris ran the defensive systems program. She was younger than Gregory, barely 40 but equally brilliant. Her team had studied the shield technology from an abandoned alien mining station in the asteroid belt. The station had been left behind when the mining company went bankrupt. No one had bothered to salvage it. Human crews had quietly stripped it of every useful component over a decade. Linda's breakthrough came when she realized that alien shields tried to absorb or deflect incoming energy. She proposed something different. What if the shield existed slightly out of phase with normal space? What if incoming weapons simply passed through the shield's quantum field and had their energy absorbed before they could solidify back into real space? The theory was radical. The testing was dangerous. 3 prototypes had exploded before they got it right. But now every human ship carried shields that made them effectively invulnerable to conventional weapons. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the ESS Defiant and watched the tactical display. He was 41 years old and had spent his entire adult life in the military. He had trained for this day since he was a teenager. Around him, his crew worked with calm efficiency. They had run through battle drills thousands of times. Every officer knew their role. Every system had been tested and retested. The Defiant was humanity's flagship, but it was also humanity's secret weapon. From the outside, it looked like a standard cruiser, decent size but nothing impressive. The alien scans would show power signatures consistent with primitive fusion reactors, weapon ports that appeared to hold basic plasma cannons, shield emitters that seemed outdated. The aliens had no idea what was really inside the Defiant and her sister ships. The power core was based on zero-point energy extraction, pulling power from the quantum foam of space itself. Each ship carried enough energy to fight for days without refueling. The weapons were not plasma cannons but zero-point beam arrays that could reach across thousands of kilometers with perfect accuracy. The shields were quantum phase barriers that existed partially outside normal space, and the engines used a spatial folding drive that let ships move faster than light without entering hyperspace, making them effectively teleporters in combat. Lieutenant Claire Bennett served as Jake's second-in-command. She was 36 and had risen through the ranks on merit and skill. Her station controlled the ship's tactical systems. She monitored the incoming data from scouts and satellites. The alien fleet was moving into position exactly as predicted. They were using a standard wedge formation, dreadnoughts in the center, battlecruisers on the flanks, smaller ships screening the perimeter. It was a formation that had worked for them hundreds of times before. They had no reason to think it would fail now. Ryan Cooper handled tactical operations from his station. He was younger than most of the bridge crew, only 28, but he had trained specifically for this role since joining the military at 18. His fingers moved across the controls as he prepared the weapon systems. Each ship in the human fleet was networked together through quantum-encrypted communication. When the order came to fire, every ship would shoot at once with targeting data shared across the entire fleet. The aliens would face not 300 individual ships but one unified weapon system with 300 firing points. Back on Earth, in a command center buried 2 kilometers beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Aaron Blake watched the strategic display alongside President Helen Carter. The weight of their decision pressed down on both of them. They had chosen to hide humanity's true capabilities until this moment. They could have revealed their advanced technology months ago, could have shown the Council that humanity was not weak, could have negotiated from a position of strength. But they had decided against that approach. The galaxy needed to see humanity fight, needed to understand that humans did not bluff and did not back down. Words could be dismissed. Demonstrations of power could not. Helen Carter was 59 years old and had spent her entire political career working toward this moment. She had authorized the secret military programs, diverted resources from social programs to fund research and development, made the hard choices that left some people hungry, while others built weapons in hidden facilities. She had been called a warmonger by her opponents, been accused of paranoia and fear-mongering. but she had never wavered in her belief that this day would come. The galaxy was not a peaceful place. It was controlled by powerful species who enforced their will on weaker ones. Humanity would not be weak, not while she led them. The alien fleet reached attack range. Commander Zixel gave the order to commence bombardment. Thousands of weapons fired at once. The void of space lit up with plasma bolts and antimatter missiles. The Council observers watched from their safe distance and nodded with satisfaction. The humans were about to learn a harsh lesson about defying galactic authority. Within hours, Earth would be conquered. Humanity would be absorbed into the galactic order. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Everything except the one factor they had not accounted for. The one variable that would change everything. Humanity had been underestimated, and they were about to make the galaxy pay for that mistake. The alien weapons crossed the empty void between the two fleets at incredible speeds. Plasma bolts that burned with the heat of stars. Antimatter missiles that could vaporize entire city blocks. Energy beams that could cut through standard military armor like paper. The Council observers watched with anticipation as their instruments tracked the incoming barrage. Admiral Kreshtal of the United Coalition Forces allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. His career had been built on moments like this. The overwhelming application of superior firepower against inferior opponents. He had conquered species before and would conquer again. The humans were just another entry in a long list of victories. The first weapons reached the human fleet and something impossible happened. Every single human ship suddenly glowed with a soft blue light. The glow formed a perfect sphere around each vessel. The plasma bolts hit those spheres and simply vanished. Not deflected. Not absorbed in the traditional sense. They ceased to exist as if they had never been fired at all. The antimatter missiles struck the barriers and their deadly payloads converted to harmless radiation that dispersed into space. The energy beams touched the blue glow and bent away into nothing. Kreshtal stared at his tactical display with confusion spreading across his scaled features. His weapons officer frantically ran diagnostics on the firing systems. The readings showed that everything had worked perfectly. The weapons had been fired correctly. The targeting had been accurate. The payloads had detonated as designed, but the human ships floated in space completely undamaged. Not a single scratch on their hulls. Not even a flicker in their power signatures to suggest their shields were under strain. On the bridge of the Defiant, Lieutenant Angela Price monitored the defensive systems with barely contained excitement. She had worked on the Quantum Phase Barrier project for 6 years, had helped design the field generators that could shift matter slightly out of sync with normal space. The alien weapons were hitting barriers that existed in a different quantum state. The energy transferred into collection arrays before it could affect the ships. Every shot the aliens fired was actually charging humanity's weapons for the counterattack. Jake Morrison watched the display for exactly 30 seconds after the alien barrage began. That was the amount of time he had decided to give them. 30 seconds to see their weapons fail. 30 seconds to realize they had made a terrible mistake. 30 seconds to understand that humanity was not what they thought. Then he gave the order that would change galactic history. His voice was calm and steady as he spoke 2 simple words. Fire everything. 300 human ships unleashed their weapons simultaneously. From each vessel, beams of pure white light lanced out across space. These were not the weapons the galaxy knew. Not plasma or lasers or particle beams. These were zero-point energy weapons that reached into the quantum foam of reality itself and pulled out raw power. When those beams hit an alien ship, the results were devastating. The molecular bonds that held the hull together simply stopped working. Metal and composite materials came apart at the atomic level. Ships did not explode in the traditional sense. They dissolved, came apart like sandcastles hit by ocean waves. The crafty battlecruiser Dominator had survived 17 major fleet engagements without taking critical damage. It was considered the pride of their navy. It had armor plating 3 meters thick in some places, shield generators that could withstand sustained bombardment from multiple sources, a crew of 1,200 warriors who had trained their entire lives for combat. The Dominator lasted 4 seconds against a human destroyer. The white beam touched its bow and the dissolution spread backward through the entire ship. By the time the beam shut off, there was nothing left but expanding clouds of gas and debris. The draconian dreadnought Infernus was even more impressive. At 2 kilometers long, it was one of the largest warships in the galaxy. Its weapons could crack moons. Its shields had never been breached in combat. It carried enough firepower to bombard a planet into submission. 3 human frigates targeted it together. Their combined beams hit different sections of the ship and tore it into 4 separate pieces. Those pieces then came apart into smaller fragments. The entire process took less than 10 seconds. Hundreds of escape pods launched from the dying ship, but the Infernus itself was gone. All across the battlefield, alien ships began to die. The Coalition fleet had brought over 2,000 vessels to ensure overwhelming victory. In the first minute of human counterattack, they lost 300 ships. In the second minute, they lost another 200. The numbers climbed with terrifying speed. 400, 500, 600. The alien formations broke apart as captains tried desperately to evade the white beams. But evasion was impossible against enemies who could predict your movements and fire at the speed of light. Then the human fleet did something that made the impossible situation even worse. They moved. Not with conventional drives that the aliens could track and predict. The human ships simply vanished from one location and reappeared in another. The spatial folding drives allowed them to collapse the distance between 2 points without actually traveling through the space in between. One moment a human destroyer was 5,000 kilometers away. The next moment it was directly behind an alien cruiser with weapons already firing. Commander Lisa Grant piloted her fighter craft through the chaos with precision that seemed superhuman because it literally was. The swift arrow was not a separate machine she controlled. It was an extension of her body. The neural interface technology linked her mind directly to the ship's systems at the quantum level. She thought about turning left and the ship turned before her conscious mind finished the thought. She saw a target and her weapons fired before she could verbally issue the command. Her reaction time was measured in microseconds instead of the seconds that normal pilots required. She identified 3 alien destroyers trying to regroup into a defensive formation. Her combat computer calculated firing solutions and transmitted them to her brain as pure information. She did not need to read numbers or watch displays. She simply knew where to shoot and when. Her weapons discharged 3 times in rapid succession. Each shot was perfectly placed to hit critical systems. Engines, weapon batteries, bridge sections. The 3 destroyers went dark and began tumbling through space as their surviving crews scrambled for escape. Pods Admiral Crescitel's flagship shuddered as a human destroyer appeared directly above it and opened fire. The shields that had protected his command ship through dozens of battles collapsed instantly. The armor that should have withstood sustained bombardment peeled away like wet paper. Emergency alarms screamed throughout the vessel as systems failed in cascading waves. The crew abandoned their posts and ran for escape pods. Crescetel himself had barely enough time to reach an ejection capsule before his ship came apart around him. As his escape pod tumbled away from the dying flagship, Crescetel watched the battle through the small viewport. He had commanded fleets for 30 years, had studied tactics and strategy at the finest military academies in the galaxy, had fought against every major species and won more often than he lost. Everything he knew about warfare said what he was witnessing was impossible. No fleet could move that fast. No weapons could be that powerful. No shields could be that effective. Yet the humans were doing all 3 simultaneously. The battle was not going according to plan. The battle was not even recognizable as a battle anymore. It was an execution, a demonstration, a lesson being taught to the galaxy by a species everyone had dismissed as primitive. The human fleet moved through the alien formation like wolves through sheep. Their weapons fired with perfect accuracy. Their shields never faltered. Their movements were coordinated with machine precision. In the Galactic Council chamber, panic replaced the earlier confidence. The holographic display showed the carnage in real time. Representatives who had been laughing at human defiance an hour ago now so. Yet in stunned silence, Vexthar's mandibles clicked nervously as he watched his carefully planned conquest turn into a disaster. Commander Zixel stared at the tactical data with the expression of someone watching their entire career collapse. The draconian representative Korax had stopped laughing. His claws gripped his chair hard enough to leave marks in the metal. 20 minutes into the engagement, the Coalition fleet had lost over 800 ships. The human fleet had lost none. Not a single casualty, not even a damaged vessel. The aliens began to retreat without waiting for orders. Individual captains made the decision to flee rather than die. The organized battle formations dissolved into chaos as ships turned and ran in every direction. But running from humans who could fold space was like trying to outrun teleportation. The The human fleet pursued with ruthless efficiency. Captain Danny Pierce commanded the ESS Ranger and found himself cutting off the escape route of 6 Luminian cruisers. His weapons officer Stephanie Brooks locked targeting solutions on their engine sections. Danny hesitated for just a moment. The Luminians had tried to negotiate peace. They had argued against the war. They were not the primary aggressors. He made a decision that would define humanity's response. His voice was firm as he gave the order. Disable them, but do not destroy them. Target engines only. The Ranger fired 6 precise shots. Each beam struck an engine section and burned through the drive systems without penetrating into crew sections. The Luminian ships went dead in space, but their hulls remained intact. Their crews survived. The message was clear. Humanity could kill, but chose to show mercy where appropriate. They were not butchers. They were warriors with honor who understood the difference between enemies who deserved death and those who simply found themselves on the wrong side. Jake Morrison watched the enemy fleet scatter in full retreat. His tactical display showed alien ships fleeing in every direction. Some were jumping to hyperspace. Others were heading for the system's edge at maximum speed. Many were simply floating dead in space with their systems shut down in surrender. 23 minutes had passed since the aliens opened fire. In that time, humanity had shattered the most powerful military force the galaxy had assembled in decades. Now came the next critical moment. The moment that would determine whether this was just a battle or the beginning of a longer war. Jake turned to Claire Bennett and spoke clearly. Open a channel to the Council. It was time for humanity to speak. The communication systems in the Galactic Council chamber crackled to life without warning. The Council members had not authorized any transmission, but their security systems were overridden by technology they did not understand. The massive holographic display that had been showing the battle suddenly changed to show a human face. Captain Jake Morrison stood on his bridge with his crew visible behind him. The backdrop was professional and military, but not threatening. The humans had carefully staged this moment to send a specific message. They were in control now. Vexthar tried to speak but found his voice failing him. His 4 arms gestured frantically at his technical staff to cut the connection. The technicians worked their controls desperately, but nothing responded. The humans had not just opened a communication channel. They had taken over the entire Council communication network. Every screen in the chamber showed Jake Morrison's face. Every speaker carried his voice. The Council could do nothing but watch and listen. Jake took a moment to make eye contact with each visible Council member through the camera. His expression was not angry or triumphant. It was calm, professional, the look of someone who had done an unpleasant job and was now moving forward with the next phase. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly through the chamber. People of the Galactic Council, for 3 months you have threatened our world. You studied our civilization and decided we were inferior. You sent your fleets to conquer us. You demanded our surrender and promised our destruction. Your military experts forecasted our defeat in hours. He paused and gestured to something off-screen. The display split to show the battle statistics alongside his face. The numbers told a brutal story. Time elapsed, 23 minutes. Allied ships destroyed, 842. Allied ships disabled, 317. Allied ships in retreat, over 700. Human ships destroyed, 0. Human ships damaged, 0. Human casualties, 0. The Council members stared at those numbers as if they could make them change through willpower alone. Jake continued speaking with that same calm tone. We have been fighting for 23 minutes. Your fleet is broken. Your military power in this system is ended. We can continue this engagement for as long as you wish. Our weapons have enough power for days of continuous combat. Our shields have not been strained by anything you have thrown at us. Our ships can chase yours anywhere in this system. So the question now is simple. Should we continue, or are you ready to discuss terms? In the Council chamber, the representatives looked at each other with expressions ranging from shock to horror to grudging respect. The draconian representative Korax was the first to find his voice. His species did not surrender easily, but they understood strength when they saw it. What you have done today is impossible by every law of physics and warfare we know. How did a species we classified as primitive achieve this? Jake allowed himself a small smile. You classified us as primitive because we let you. You observed our public technology and assumed that was all we had. You never considered that a species under threat might hide its true capabilities until the moment of maximum advantage. You made assumptions based on arrogance and paid the price for those assumptions. The Luminian representative Quinra spoke next. Her luminescent form pulsed with sadness and concern. We tried to prevent this war. We argued for peaceful contact and gradual integration. But both sides rejected compromise. Now hundreds of thousands are dead or wounded. Was there no other way? Jake's expression became more serious. We offered peace. We requested diplomatic contact when you first discovered us. We asked to be treated as equals and negotiate our relationship with the galaxy on fair terms. Your council rejected that request. You gave us an ultimatum instead. Submit or be destroyed. You forced this confrontation. We simply decided how it would end. Back on Earth in the command center, President Helen Carter watched the exchange with General Aaron Blake standing beside her. They had scripted Jake's initial words but left him free to improvise based on the council's responses. Helen knew that the next few minutes would determine humanity's future, in ways that the battle itself had not. Winning the fight was important. Winning the peace was essential. She opened her communication link to the Defiant and spoke quietly. Captain Morrison, offer them the terms we discussed. Make it clear these are non-negotiable. Jake received the message through his earpiece and nodded slightly. He turned his attention back to the council members. Humanity is willing to end hostilities immediately under the following conditions. First, immediate ceasefire by all coalition forces. Second, recognition of human sovereignty over our entire star system with a buffer zone extending 10 light-years in all directions. Third, a seat on the Galactic Council with full voting rights and equal status to all current members. Fourth, establishment of formal diplomatic relations and trade agreements on terms to be negotiated later. You have 5 minutes to discuss these terms among yourselves and provide an answer. Vexthar finally found his voice again. His mandibles clicked in agitation. 5 minutes? You expect us to make a decision of this magnitude in 5 minutes? This requires proper deliberation. Committee meetings. Legal reviews. We cannot simply agree to revolutionize galactic order because you won a single battle. Jake's expression hardened. You had 3 months to deliberate before attacking us. You made your decision quickly enough when you thought you held all the advantages. Now the situation has reversed and suddenly you need time to think. I understand your position, but my orders are clear. 5 minutes. If you reject our terms, we will resume combat operations. We will pursue every ship in your fleet. We will disable or destroy them all, and when that is done we will have this conversation again, except your negotiating position will be even weaker. The council display showed a timer counting down from 5 minutes. The chamber erupted in arguments as representatives shouted at each other in multiple languages. The Draconians wanted to reject the terms and regroup for another attack. The Krathi were calculating whether their remaining forces could be reinforced quickly enough to matter. The Luminians argued for immediate acceptance. Smaller species representatives tried to be heard over the louder voices. Vexthar attempted to restore order, but his authority had been shattered along with the fleet. Commander Zixel pulled up tactical data on his personal display. His military training forced him to analyze the situation objectively, despite his emotional response. The coalition still had over 700 ships that were intact and fleeing. If they could regroup beyond the system's edge, they might be able to mount another attack. But as he studied the numbers, he realized the truth. The human ships were faster. Their weapons had longer range. Air defenses were impenetrable. Regrouping would only delay the inevitable. The 700 surviving ships would die, just like the first 800 had died, slowly and without being able to fight back. He stood and his voice cut through the arguing. High Chancellor, I recommend we accept the human terms. As the military commander who planned this operation, I take full responsibility for its failure. But as someone who understands warfare, I am telling you that continued resistance is suicide. We cannot win this fight. Not today. Not next week. Not until we understand their technology and develop countermeasures. That will take years at minimum. In the meantime, every ship we send against them will die uselessly. Accept their terms. Preserve what forces remain. Live to negotiate another day. The chamber fell silent as the council members absorbed this assessment. Zixel had just ended his own career with that speech. Admitting failure so completely would result in his disgrace and removal from command. But he had also spoken truth that none of them could deny. The Draconian representative was the first to respond. I withdraw my objection to the human terms. The Krathi Empire follows the Draconian lead and also accepts. One by one, the other species added their agreement. Some did so reluctantly with voices full of resentment. Others spoke with relief that the bloodshed would end. The Luminians agreed enthusiastically and immediately began suggesting frameworks for the diplomatic discussions to follow. When the last species had spoken, Vexithar looked at the timer. 40 seconds remained of the 5 minutes. He drew himself up to his full height and spoke with as much dignity as he could recover. Captain Morrison. The Galactic Council accepts your terms. We agree to immediate ceasefire. We recognize human sovereignty over your system. We grant humanity a seat on this council with full rights and privileges, and we agree to establish diplomatic relations to be formalized through proper channels. I am transmitting the official acceptance now along with ceasefire orders to all coalition forces. Jake watched his tactical display as the alien ships received their orders. The few that were still fighting stopped shooting. The ships that were fleeing slowed and held position. The disabled vessels began broadcasting distress signals requesting rescue. The battle was over. Humanity had won not just a military victory but a political one. They had forced the galaxy to recognize them as equals through strength of arms. Jake allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before issuing new orders. All human forces cease fire immediately. Maintain defensive positions around disabled enemy vessels. Provide emergency assistance to any ships broadcasting critical distress signals. We are no longer at war. He turned back to the Council transmission. High Chancellor, our medical ships are standing by to assist with rescue operations. We will transfer coordinates of disabled vessels and work with your recovery teams. Humanity does not seek unnecessary death. We sought only to defend ourselves and secure our rightful place in galactic civilization. Vexthar nodded slowly. The humans were being gracious in victory. That would make the coming negotiations slightly less painful. Your offer of assistance is accepted. We will coordinate rescue operations through military channels. I suggest we schedule a formal diplomatic meeting to finalize the details of your integration into the Council. Shall we say 1 week from today? Jake consulted briefly with someone off-screen, then nodded. 1 week is acceptable. We will send our diplomatic team to your Council station. Until then, we expect all coalition forces to withdraw from our system. Any ships that remain after 24 hours will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. The transmission ended and the Council chamber's displays returned to normal. 3 days after the battle ended, a small unarmed vessel entered Earth's atmosphere and descended toward the newly constructed diplomatic facility in Geneva. The ship carried 12 representatives from the major species of the Galactic Council. They came not as conquerors but as guests, invited to discuss the terms of humanity's integration into galactic civilization. The vessel landed on a platform designed to accommodate various alien physiologies. Security was heavy but not threatening. Human soldiers stood at attention in dress uniforms while diplomatic staff waited to greet the visitors. Ambassador Quinra of the Luminians was the first to emerge from the ship. Her crystalline form glowed softly in the afternoon sunlight. Behind her came Vexthar, the High Chancellor whose mandibles clicked nervously as he took his first steps on human soil. The Draconian representative Kreeth followed with his scales gleaming. Others came after them, a parade of species who had threatened to destroy this world just days ago. Now they walked as supplicants hoping to understand how they had lost so completely. President Helen Carter met them at the entrance to the conference center. She wore a formal suit and projected calm authority. Beside her stood General Aaron Blake in full military dress. Behind them waited the scientists who had made the impossible possible. Gregory Hayes with his tired eyes, Linda Morris with her confident smile, Dr. Matthew Turner with his analytical expression. The aliens studied these humans carefully, trying to understand how such ordinary-looking beings had achieved such extraordinary results. The conference room had been designed specifically for this meeting. Chairs and platforms accommodated different body types. The atmosphere was adjusted to remain comfortable for all species present. Translation devices ensured everyone could understand each other perfectly. Holographic displays stood ready to show technical data. Everything had been planned to facilitate honest discussion rather than confrontation. Quinra spoke first after everyone had settled into position. Her voice carried the melodic quality of her species. President Carter, we come here with questions that our entire civilization needs answered. What we witnessed 3 days ago should not have been possible. Your technology exceeded ours by margins that our scientists cannot explain. The quantum phase barriers alone represent advances that we believed were centuries away from development. The zero-point energy weapons violate principles we thought were universal physical laws. The spatial folding drives work on theories we abandoned as impossible. We must know how you achieved this. Helen gestured to Gregory Hayes to begin the explanation. Gregory stood and activated the first holographic display. It showed a timeline starting 78 years in the past. Ambassador, you are correct that we could not have developed this technology entirely on our own. Our advancement required a starting point that came from beyond our world. In the year that you would calculate as 78 Earth years ago, a Krathi scout ship crashed in a remote desert region. The impact killed the crew instantly. Your empire classified it as an acceptable loss and never sent a recovery mission. The Krathi representative Velox shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His scales rippled with embarrassment. We had no idea anyone on Earth possessed the capability to salvage the wreckage. Our scans showed a primitive civilization barely capable of atmospheric flight. Gregory nodded. That was a reasonable assumption based on what you could observe, but you failed to consider human curiosity and determination. We found that crash site within days. We transported the wreckage to a secure facility, and we spent the next 7 decades taking apart every system on that ship and learning how it worked. The faster-than-light drive, the energy weapons, the shield generators, the computer systems. Everything became a lesson in advanced physics and engineering. Linda Morris stood to continue the explanation. She activated displays showing additional alien technology that humans had acquired, but the Krathi ship was not our only source of knowledge. 23 years ago, your mining consortium abandoned an automated station in our asteroid belt when the company went bankrupt. You never bothered to salvage it because the equipment was considered obsolete. We quietly stripped that station of every useful component over the course of 2 years. The Luminian shield technology we found there became the foundation for our defensive systems. Quinra's glow brightened with realization. The mining station Alpha 7. We wrote off the loss in our financial reports and forgot it existed. You're saying you built your shields by studying our discarded equipment? Exactly, Linda smiled. But here's what you need to understand. We did not simply copy your technology. We studied it, analyzed it, understood the underlying principles, and then we improved it. Your shields try to absorb or deflect incoming energy. We asked a different question. What if the shield existed partially outside normal space? What if incoming weapons passed through a quantum field that drained their energy before they could reach the ship? That approach came from human quantum physics research combined with your engineering principles. Dr. Matthew Turner took over the presentation. His holographic displays showed complex mathematical models. The zero-point energy weapons represent a similar synthesis. The Krathi taught us about directed energy weapons. The Luminians taught us about field manipulation. But the breakthrough came from human particle physics and computer simulation. We ran trillions of virtual experiments testing different configurations. We simulated quantum interactions at scales that would take traditional mathematics centuries to calculate. Our computers allowed us to explore possibilities faster than any species that relied purely on theoretical mathematics. Vexithar leaned forward with his mandibles clicking rapidly. You used brute force computation to bypass traditional research methods. You tested virtually what we would have tested physically over generations. Matthew nodded. Precisely. Our computers are not more powerful than yours in terms of raw processing capability, but we use them differently. Where you use computers to verify theories developed through mathematics, we use computers to generate theories through simulation. We let the machines explore millions of possibilities and then we study the results that work. It is a fundamentally different approach to scientific research. General Aaron Blake stood to address the military aspects. He activated displays showing the human fleet development timeline. While our scientists were developing technology, our military was building infrastructure. We established shipyards on the far side of our moon, where your orbital scans could not detect them. We mined asteroids for raw materials using automated systems that left no obvious signatures. We trained an entire generation of soldiers and spacers in facilities hidden deep underground. For 15 years we converted our entire industrial capacity toward preparing for the war we knew would eventually come. Kreeth, the draconian warrior, spoke with grudging respect in his voice. You maintained the appearance of a primitive civilization, while secretly building a modern military force. That level of deception requires incredible discipline. How did you keep it secret from your own population? Helen Carter answered that question directly. We did not keep it entirely secret. Millions of humans worked on these projects, but we controlled information carefully. Workers knew their specific tasks but not the complete picture. We built the facilities in remote locations. We classified all research under the highest security levels, and we used the fact that you were only conducting passive scans. You observed our cities and our public infrastructure. You never looked for hidden military installations because you assumed we were too primitive to have any worth finding. She paused to let that sink in. But more importantly, we had motivation. Every person who worked on these projects understood what was at stake. We knew that advanced civilizations were watching us. We knew that eventually you would make contact. We knew that you would judge us by your standards and find us wanting. We had to make a choice. We could develop openly and risk you suppressing our advancement before we were ready. Or we could develop in secret and reveal our capabilities only when we could defend them. We chose the latter path. Quinra spoke again with sadness in her voice. We tried to prevent this war. We argued in the Council for peaceful contact. We suggested that humanity should be invited to join the galactic community through negotiation rather than force. But we were overruled by those who saw your world as a resource to be claimed. If we had succeeded in our diplomatic efforts, would you have revealed your technology willingly? Helen considered the question carefully before answering. Honestly, we do not know. We had prepared for war because war seemed most likely, but we also had diplomatic plans ready. If you had approached us as equals, if you had offered genuine partnership instead of subjugation, we might have responded differently. But your council gave us an ultimatum: submit or be destroyed. At that point, we had no choice but to demonstrate our strength. Gregory Hayes added his perspective. What you need to understand is that humanity has been watching the galaxy for decades. We studied your history through the broadcasts and data transmissions we intercepted. We saw how you treated younger species, how you forced them into client relationships, how you controlled their development and exploited their resources. We saw that the galactic order was built on domination rather than cooperation. We decided we would not accept that fate for our species. Linda Morris brought up displays showing comparative technological development. Here is what makes our situation unique. Most species develop slowly over thousands of years. They advance their technology gradually as they explore their own star system, and eventually achieve faster-than-light travel. By the time they encounter the galactic community, they have already established their place in the technological hierarchy. But we encountered you early. We knew we were behind. We knew we needed to catch up quickly. That pressure forced us to innovate in ways that species with more time never had to consider. Matthew Turner emphasized the key point. We combined technologies from multiple species in ways none of you had attempted. The Krathi focus on weapons. The Luminians focus on defense. The Draconians focus on engines. Each of you specialized and perfected your particular strengths. But none of you thought to integrate everything into unified systems. We took your weapons research and combined it with your shield technology and your engine designs. We found synergies that none of you discovered because you all worked in isolation. Velox the Krathi officer spoke with a tone of realization. You are saying that our specialization became a weakness. We became so focused on perfecting our individual technologies that we never looked for connections between different fields. Exactly. Linda smiled. And we exploited that weakness. Every species in the galaxy has been operating within the same paradigm for centuries. You have refined your existing technologies, but you have not revolutionized them. Humanity brought fresh perspectives precisely because we were not locked into your traditional methods. We could approach problems from angles you never considered because we did not know those angles were supposed to be impossible. Jake Morrison entered the room at that moment. He had been invited to join the diplomatic discussions as the military commander who had led humanity to victory. He took a seat near the president and listened as the explanations continued. When there was a pause in the conversation, he spoke. Everything my colleagues have told you is true. But there is one more factor you need to understand. Humanity fights differently than you do. We have spent our entire history in conflict with each other. We have developed warfare into a science and an art. We understand tactics and strategy at levels that species with less violent histories never needed to master. Kreith leaned forward with interest. You are saying your internal conflicts prepared you for external warfare? Jake nodded. Every war we fought taught us lessons. Every weapon we developed for use against each other could be adapted for use against external threats. When we encountered your technology, we immediately began thinking about how to counter it, how to defeat ships with better shields, how to outmaneuver vessels with faster engines, how to destroy weapons more powerful than ours. That military mindset combined with our technological capabilities made us far more dangerous than you anticipated. The meeting continued. For hours, as humans explained every aspect of their technological and military development. The aliens asked detailed questions about specific systems. The humans answered honestly but carefully, revealing enough to satisfy curiosity without compromising security. By the time the session ended, the galactic representatives understood how humanity had achieved the impossible. Through salvage and study, through innovation and synthesis, through determination and necessity, through secret development and patient preparation, the humans had turned the galaxy's own abandoned technology against it and won a victory that would change the balance of power forever. 6 months had passed since the battle that changed. Everything in the Galactic Council chamber looked different now. A new section had been added to accommodate the human delegation. Ambassador Nicole Palmer sat in the human seat with the same rights and privileges as representatives who had held their positions for decades. Beside her sat Jake Morrison, now promoted to admiral and serving as military advisor. On her other side was Linda Morris, representing the scientific community. The three of them formed humanity's voice in galactic affairs. The chamber filled with representatives as it did every month for the regular council session. But the atmosphere had changed in ways both subtle and obvious. The arrogance that had once permeated every discussion was gone. Species that had lorded their superiority over younger civilizations now spoke with more caution. The Draconians no longer laughed at military assessments. The Krathi no longer dismissed alternative tactical approaches. The Luminians no longer had to argue alone for peaceful solutions. Humanity had not just won a seat at the table, they had changed the entire conversation. High Chancellor Vexthar called the session to order with his forearms raised in the traditional gesture. His mandibles clicked nervously as they always did now when humans were present. The first item on today's agenda is the technology sharing proposal submitted by the human delegation. Ambassador Palmer, the floor is yours. Nicole stood and activated her presentation with a small device that was itself a demonstration of human innovation. The holographic display showed technical diagrams and statistical analyses that represented 6 months of collaborative work. Thank you, High Chancellor. When humanity joined this council, we made a promise. We said we did not come to dominate, but to contribute. We said we wanted to advance the galaxy together rather than rule it alone. Today we are making good on that promise. The display shifted to show 3 separate projects. The first combined Krathi weapons theory with Luminian shield technology and human computational modeling. Working together, our scientists have developed shield systems that are 40% more efficient than any previous design. These shields require less power, generate less heat, and can withstand greater punishment. The second project merged Draconian engine designs with human spatial folding concepts. The result is a drive system that is twice as fast as the previous galactic standard, while using only 60% of the fuel. The third project involves medical technology from the Luminian people, enhanced with human nanotechnology and Krathi biological research. We have created treatment methods that can heal injuries and cure diseases that were previously considered terminal. She paused to let the council absorb this information. And we are offering all of these innovations freely to every member species. No licensing fees, no restrictions, no requirements except that you agree to share your own developments in return. We are proposing a new model for galactic cooperation based on open collaboration rather than hoarded secrets. The Krathi representative, a younger officer named Velox who had replaced the disgraced Zixel, stood to speak. This is unprecedented. For thousands of years, advanced technology has been the primary source of power in galactic politics. Species guard their innovations jealously because that knowledge represents military and economic advantage. You are suggesting we simply give away our most valuable assets? Nicole smiled. We are suggesting that collaboration produces better results than competition. Look at the 3 projects I just showed you. None of them could have been created by any single species alone. The Krathi understand weapons but struggle with defense. The Luminians excel at shields but have limited offensive capability. The Draconians build powerful engines but lack the mathematical frameworks for spatial manipulation. Humans bring computational power and fresh perspectives, but we lack the centuries of accumulated knowledge you possess. Together we achieve what none of us could accomplish separately. Gregory Hayes, attending as part of the human technical team, stood to add his perspective. I have spent my entire career developing weapons. I thought I understood the limits of what was possible. Then I started working with Crathy engineers and Luminian physicists. They showed me approaches I had never considered, principles I had never studied. In 6 months of collaboration, we have made advances that would have taken me decades to achieve alone, and they say the same about learning from us. This is not charity. This is enlightened self-interest. We all benefit when we work together. The Draconian representative Creeth spoke next. His voice carried a tone of grudging respect that had developed over months of interaction with humans. You humiliated us in battle. Our fleet was destroyed. Our pride was shattered. Many of my people wanted revenge. They argued we should rebuild and attack again. But others pointed out what you did after the battle. You offered medical assistance to our wounded. You helped rescue crews from disabled ships. You treated prisoners with dignity and released them quickly. You showed that strength does not require cruelty. That is why I stand here today arguing for cooperation instead of revenge. He activated his own display showing training footage. 3 months ago, I began a joint program between Draconian warriors and human marines. We train together now, exchange techniques and tactics. My people are teaching yours about close combat and boarding actions. Your people are teaching mine about small unit coordination and adaptive strategies. Both forces are becoming stronger. When the Zenith Raiders attacked the mining colony at Kepler Station last month, it was a joint human-Draconian response team that drove them off. We fought together as allies. That would have been unthinkable a year ago. The council chamber buzzed with quiet conversations as representatives discussed these developments among themselves. The smaller species, who had always been dominated by the major powers, saw opportunity in the human proposal. If technology was freely shared, they could advance without waiting decades for permission to access innovations. The major powers saw both threat and opportunity. Threat because their technological advantage would diminish. Opportunity because collaboration might produce advances they could not achieve alone. Vexthar called for order, and the chamber quieted. This proposal requires careful consideration. We will form a committee to study the details and make recommendations. But I think we can all acknowledge that humanity has proven their commitment to constructive engagement. 6 months ago, we expected to be fighting a long war. Instead, we are discussing cooperation and shared advancement. That is remarkable progress. Nicole sat down as the discussion moved to other agenda items. Trade agreements between human corporations and alien companies. Standardization of communication protocols. Establishment of joint research facilities. Scheduling for cultural exchange programs. The mundane details of building relationships between civilizations. It was boring work compared to space battles and dramatic ultimatums, but it was the work that would determine whether the galaxy moved forward together or fell back into conflict. After the council session ended, Nicole met with Jake and Linda in a private conference room. The three of them reviewed the day's proceedings and planned for the next session. Linda pulled up reports from the joint research stations that had been established on neutral territory. Human scientists working alongside alien colleagues, sharing data and methods, building relationships that transcended species boundaries. The progress was remarkable, but challenges remained. Some species still resented humanity's sudden rise to prominence. There were incidents. A human merchant ship harassed by Crathy patrol vessels, who refused to accept that the war was over. A human research team denied access to a Draconian archive despite official agreements. Angry protests outside the human embassy on the council station. The wounds of the brief war had not fully healed, but there were positive signs too. A colony called Unity had been established on a planet in neutral space. Humans, Crathy, Draconians, Luminians, and others living and working together, building something new. The colony was small, only 5,000 inhabitants, but it represented hope for what the galaxy could become. Children of different species playing together. Scientists from different worlds collaborating in shared laboratories. Merchants from different cultures trading freely in open markets. Jake pulled up military reports next. His new position as Admiral of the Joint Defense Fleet gave him access to intelligence from across the galaxy. We have a problem developing in the outer sectors. The Zenith Raiders are becoming more organized. They hit 3 more colonies this month. 2 human, 1 Luminian. Response times are too slow because we still do not have integrated command structures. Nicole nodded. That will be my priority for next month's session. We need formal agreements on mutual defense. Right now, every species responds to threats independently. We need coordinated action. The Zenith Raiders are testing us, seeing if the cooperation we talk about actually works in practice. Linda added her perspective. The Raiders are not our only problem. There are species beyond Council space who are watching what happened here. Some see opportunity in the chaos. Others see threat in human technology. We need to be ready for contact with civilizations we have not met yet, and we need to present a united front when that contact comes. The 3 of them worked late into the evening planning humanity's next moves in galactic politics. It was demanding work that never ended, but it was important work. The battle 6 months ago had won humanity's independence and secured their place in the galaxy. Now came the harder task of building lasting peace and genuine cooperation. Across the galaxy, the changes continued. Human technology spread through established trade networks. Alien goods appeared in markets on Earth. Students from different species studied together at new universities built to accommodate diverse biologies. Cultural works crossed species boundaries as humans discovered alien art, and aliens discovered human music. The galaxy was becoming more connected and more diverse simultaneously. Captain Danny Pierce, who had shown mercy to the Luminian cruisers during the battle, now commanded a joint patrol vessel with a mixed crew, humans and Luminians working side by side, learning each other's languages and customs, building trust through shared experiences. His ship, the ESS Unity, patrolled the border regions where raiders and pirates operated. They had already intervened in 4 attacks and were building a reputation as a force that protected all species equally. Commander Lisa Grant had transitioned from combat pilot to instructor. She taught at the new Joint Military Academy, where human neural interface techniques were being shared with allied species. Her students came from 6 different civilizations. They learned from each other as much as from her. The academy was producing a new generation of warriors who saw themselves as defenders of the galaxy rather than champions of individual species. 1 year after the battle that was supposed to destroy humanity in hours but ended in minutes, Ambassador Nicole Palmer stood before the Galactic Council to deliver an annual report. The statistics she presented told a story of transformation. Trade between Earth and galactic markets had increased tenfold. Joint research projects had produced 17 major breakthroughs in fields ranging from medicine to engineering. Collaborative defense operations had stopped 23 pirate raids with 0 civilian casualties. Most importantly, no new wars had started between council members in 12 months. She concluded her report with words that captured what humanity had achieved. The council forecasted our defeat in hours. We ended the war in minutes. But that victory was just the beginning. The real achievement is what we are building together now, a galaxy where strength is measured not by the ability to conquer, but by the willingness to cooperate, where advancement comes through collaboration rather than domination, where different species work together toward common goals instead of fighting over limited resources. This is the future humanity offers. This is why we fought for our independence. Not to stand alone, but to stand as equals in building something better. The council members rose in a gesture that had become traditional when humans finished speaking. A sign of respect that acknowledged the change humanity had brought. The galaxy would never return to what it had been before. The old order of domination and submission was ending. A new order based on cooperation and mutual benefit was emerging. It would face challenges and setbacks, but it had something the old order never possessed. It had hope.